between being a minority female and not having a mentor, it was really lonely in the beginning. It was a constant question of, am I doing the right thing? Why am I leaving my law degree? Is this something that I can continue to pursue? Also, growing up in a family, my parents are both people from Vietnam. So it was not, they fled their country from a war, came here with nothing. And so, as you can imagine, the money talks that we had were probably different than most advisors.
This podcast is for advisor use only and not to be distributed to the public. The Wealth Consulting Group is an SEC-registered investment advisor, and the opinions voiced and contents in this podcast are for general information only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual. All performance referenced is historical and is no guarantee of future results. All indices are unmanaged and may not be invested into directly. The economic forecasts set forth in this material may not develop as predicted, and there can be no guarantee that strategies promoted will be successful.
All right, welcome to episode 27 of the Bull of Wall Street. And today I'm smiling. I've got my buddy Anh Tran on. She's a certified financial planner and also an attorney. Turned financial planner, I think, is how that happened. But Anh and I are good buddies. We used to hang out at conferences when they used to let me go to them. Anyway, we used to hang out at conferences. Her husband, John, and I play a lot of golf together. And Anh is the first financial advisor on the pod. We've had a lot of episodes already. And since this podcast is intended for advisors, I asked Anh to participate for a couple of reasons. One, she's an extremely successful advisor when it comes to amount of assets that she manages for clients, as well as very influential in the community of advisors that we hang out in, affiliated with our broker-dealer in that enterprise. She's also obviously a female. And as you guys know, at the Wealth Consulting Group, we have a lot of female advisors at the firm. I'm very interested personally, having a daughter also, in promoting more women into the financial industry. And so I do want to ask her some questions around that. I've heard from some executives in the financial world, C-suite executives that are female, that actually they've used it as an advantage and they don't see it as a disadvantage anymore. Like in the old days, I think it was very uncommon for financial advisors to be women, right? And still a male-dominated industry. And so we want to welcome Anh. Thanks, Anh, for coming on to the show today.
Thanks for having me on, Jimmy. Now, I'm struggling on how I'm going to stay serious with that bull behind you over there.
Yeah, I apologize. I got moved out of the typical room that I shoot this in at the house, and I'm in a small little bedroom, makeshift office. But we did get a floaty at the house, and that's the bull floaty for the Bull of Wall Street. And so hopefully you don't laugh too much. I saw a video of you and your kids running around your backyard. Looks like your remodel came out really well. I know you guys spent a lot of time and energy and money on that. So why don't we just get right into this? So Anh and I have been friends for a few years. And one of the stories that I know about her business is that she was someone who was successful at acquiring some practices, or a big practice. And how many years ago was that, Anh?
That was back in 2016. So I can give a little bit about my background. So I am an attorney by background. I'm still a licensed attorney in California. And I started off practicing law briefly after law school and quickly realized I did not enjoy it. I had a friend that was working at Goldman Sachs at the time and suggested maybe you try and apply for a position here, because they were looking for attorneys to join the private wealth management division. And so I started at Goldman back in 2005, 2006. And I was there for about 6 years. And then after the recession, the financial crisis happened, I realized that I wanted to make a change and go independent. And so I left and joined a broker-dealer. And then in 2016, I had been looking to acquire a practice. And so I met quite a few advisors at the time, found a practice that really jived with kind of what we do for clients, our values, how we service clients. And so I moved over to LPL in 2016 and have been here ever since.
That's awesome. And she's the founder and CEO of Sagemint Wealth. Am I saying that right?
Yes, that is
And
correct.
as you guys can see, the green in the background, and her a lovely jacket. She's always dressed to the nines, and so is her husband too, actually.
I'm just
But
trying to follow in your footsteps, Jimmy. Come on.
yeah, but they are a very attractive couple. So thanks for the background. Coming out of the legal world and into financial advice, and then as a lot of advisors have done, but also try to do, acquire, you know, a practice or a business from someone who wants to get out and transition out. How was that experience, and what can you give for advice to advisors that are looking to do that, or in the process, or maybe they've acquired one and the transition's not going so well? So, what are some of those, key things that advisors can be thinking about when it comes to that?
Yeah, I think there was a lot of intentionality in the practices that I was looking or hoping to acquire. And so I think I spent about 2 years meeting with advisors at the time, trying to meet with advisors, making sure that it was the right fit. I think right now, as a lot of advisors are trying to grow their practice and they're looking for businesses to acquire, I think oftentimes I hear they're just acquiring just to acquire, right? And so the corporate culture, the culture of both companies, the culture of both advisors, I think will really, they need to mix together well. And if it's not there, you're going to find issues. And so I spent a lot of time looking for that. And I think that's why I've been fortunate to have what I believe a very successful acquisition merger of our two practices, because I merged my practice and brought it over here to LPL. And so I spent about 2 years with these advisors, meeting them once a month. Every month I came to their office. I looked at how they worked with their clients. I sat in on client meetings. I met their employees. I looked at their book. I looked at their process. I looked at how they managed their assets. What was their operational efficiencies? How did they run their practice? And so I spent a long time figuring all that out before. And they also wanted to interview me and make sure that I was a good fit for their clients. And so, because I think we were aligned in that sense, that allowed us to really spend a lot of time together before we actually merged our practices. And so I think it's really important to do that deep dive, because if you're not in their business and you're just looking at the numbers, there's just a lot of things you don't know. And I've heard a lot of stories of other advisors, just you don't know what you don't know until you're actually in it. And then it might be, you're too far into it to realize, okay, why didn't I see this? And I think, there's always going to be things you're going to miss. There's always things that you're going to find, but you need to be prepared. You need to be prepared for the clients, the client load, what type of work that these clients are expecting. And also, I think it's important to be able to tell the story of why this is happening. I think it's important for your transition to make sure that clients stay on board, because you want the clients to feel like this is a transition that we're still keeping clients top of mind, and we wanted to make sure our clients understood that. We wanted them to know that we still, we really respected their values, their opinions. And coming in, I wanted to make sure that the other advisors that I bought the practice from stayed on board for a few years. I didn't want it to be where I came on board and then they left after 3 or 6 months. And so we were very intentional about all of that.
How many years was the actual transition with the other advisors staying in the business, interacting with clients?
5 years. So
5 years.
we
Wow.
had it in a contract. And we used FP Transitions to help broker this deal. So FP Transitions did our valuation. They did a valuation of my practice, their practice. We then kind of reviewed what the numbers were. We looked at the practice and how we could create something that made sense for both of us. And so it was a 5-year transition. And I think it has worked out very well for us. We've retained most of our clients. I think I probably have 98% client retention.
That's amazing. And I know you've grown a lot since then too, right?
We have. We have. And I think part of it too is coming on board. We have a small practice. So let me start off by, we have a pretty lean practice. I am the lead advisor on the team. I have a director of wealth management who handles our relationship management along with our financial plans. I have a director of advanced strategies who's also our operations, pretty much handles all operations, operational efficiencies in the office, oversees all of our technology, client experience. We have our client service manager, and then I have a client service associate. So we are pretty lean, and we've got about 185 households that we service. And so I think because of that, we have to be very process driven, process oriented. We use EOS, so that's the Entrepreneurial Operating System by Gino Wickman. And that has really helped us take our practice to the next level, making sure that we have all of the right processes in place, taking on a practice of this size. Now, it didn't happen right away. I wish I could say I was smart enough to have done that from the beginning. It took a lot of trial and error and a lot of things of a lot of time of me just working a lot in the beginning and just really trying to do everything myself before I started to figure out I needed to delegate more and pretty much oversee how we handled our operations and service of clients.
You know what? Later on, let's talk about EOS, because we started that journey about a year ago as well. And so I'd like to maybe share some stories with you about my experience, and then maybe we can, for whoever's listening, add some value there if they're thinking about it.
Yeah, talk about that.
When you were going independent from Goldman, though, was that sort of like, did you take clients from Goldman, or was it really starting from scratch? And how long did you do that before you actually purchased the firm that you did?
So I had a handful of clients. I had a non-compete. I also I think with the type of clientele that I was servicing at Goldman, they were there for a reason, because Goldman it was part of the ACO division at Goldman, and they were the provider that was able to provide them with financial planning services. So they were the go-to. They provided financial planning services to all the C-level executives. And so when I left, it was one of those where I said, I think I'm going to have to start from scratch. I took maybe a handful of clients, the ones that actually really wanted to come, and the ones that I thought that I had capacity to handle. And so from there, I started to grow my business. In 2000, I left in 2010. Set it up right at the end of 2010, 2011, and then in 2016 was when I came over to LPL.
Wow, that's amazing. Now, being knowledgeable in estate planning, did you find that as a big advantage working with clients? And I think your clientele is mostly high net worth, right?
It is, and absolutely. I would say a lot of times when you're thinking about what advisors can offer you, there's always things that we have to define to our clients. Like, here's how we differentiate ourselves. 100%, I always use my law background. I'm fortunate to have my husband, John, who is in the same office as I am. He runs Modern Wealth Law, which is our estate planning practice. And so I'm still a licensed attorney. I would say I work with my clients on estate planning from like a planning perspective. I don't do any of the drafting anymore. And so we're able to refer a lot of clients to each other. And because of the type of clients that we service, I think that knowledge base it's really important to be able to provide that for clients. And they like knowing that they have the estate planning support if they need it. And so a lot of our clients do end up using the estate planning side along with our financial planning. And then when I was at Goldman, we also prepared tax returns for clients. And so Don, who is our director of wealth management, actually came from Goldman as well. We worked together 25 years ago. And so she has a really strong tax background. And we've also started through that implementing Holistiplan, and we offer a lot of tax planning for clients the last few years. And that has been a fantastic offering that I have found a lot of clients value, because they're not getting that from their CPAs. Unless they're really working closely with their CPAs, they're not getting the tax planning that we're doing for clients.
Yes, we use Holistiplan too. So really, your business, and you say it's lean and mean. I mean, I don't think that a lot of other advisors would consider the team that you've built too lean. And a lot of times it's just one advisor and one admin, or maybe one and a half or two. So I think you've built out a great business, and with a lot of different people there. And it sounds like to me that it's more like a multi-family office type offering when you've got the tax planning involved with the estate planning built in with yourself and John. I mean, I'm assuming that's what maybe is also a differentiator for you, is that you're incorporating not just financial advice or investment management, but these other disciplines.
Absolutely. So I mean, I wouldn't call us a family office, but we pretty much operate like we are. I think we do. For us, it's important for me to make sure that clients understand we work with you on all aspects of your finances. So we create a financial plan for all of our clients. I think that's also really important because not all advisors do. And so within that financial plan, the estate planning, the tax planning, the risk management, kind of pretty much anything in dealing with their finances, we say we're here to help you with. So depending on what chapter they are in their life, they will need help with different areas, and we're there to provide that for them.
And do you charge for the financial planning?
So we recently implemented, I would say about 3 years ago, a financial planning for a fee for clients. And that was because prior to that, I was only charging an AUM fee. And we were turning away clients that were typically a lot of the clients I work with are in a liquidity event. So either they are going through an IPO, they are in the process of selling their business, and they may not have liquidity to invest, but they will. Right. And so because of that, I had to come up with a financial planning fee only model. And so we have implemented that over the last 3 years now, and it's done quite well. We typically use that as a way to work with clients that we know will eventually bring assets over. So at this point, with my size and scale, I'm not in a place where I can take on every single financial planning client. But the ones that make sense for us, we are doing that and charging a fee.
And would you mind sharing with us? I think you might have actually done this in other, publications when you do rankings and stuff. But how much in assets under advisement do you have in your business, approximately?
We're currently at about 360 to 370 million.
Okay, that's great, and that's over 185 or so households. You said.
Yeah, we've got about 185 households. Of those, 100 and I would say 130 are advisory clients, and the remaining clients are legacy, family, friends, and so that's the makeup of our book.
I think it's great for the listeners to know because they can then compare themselves in terms of staffing, what their team looks like. And you're saying that it's a very efficient model. It sounds like it. I know that the associated, so you do have an advisor that's on your team that you mentioned that works with some of your clients too now, right? Client facing.
Right. So we've gone the relationship manager route. And so we have someone on our team who I brought on almost 2 years ago, year and a half ago, to help with client relationships and take some of the clients from my book so that I can free up some of my time. And so, but everyone in the office works very well with our clients, and everybody knows all of our clients. And so our clients they're very used to the fact that they call the office and they can talk to any one of us. And that has been fantastic for us. We make sure we keep copious notes. And that's really how we're able to do it. Because if a client calls, I think anyone on my team can help them or address anything by easily pulling up WealthBox, which is what we use. And with all the AI technology now that's coming out, it's been wonderful and has helped us to really become much more efficient in all the note-taking process.
Have you been using WealthBox for a while?
We switched over. So I will say our evolution in tech stacks it's been a pretty robust evolution. Over the last 3 to 5 years, I have changed every single technology in my office.
Wow.
And so we moved over to WealthBox 2 years ago. We were using a very old CRM system called Juncture, and we moved to WealthBox about 2 years ago, and it's been wonderful. I love it. So it's definitely one of a learning curve with any change, but it's worked out very well for us. And now we're starting to implement some of the AI technology. We use Jump for our note taking, which which has also been a game changer, especially for me personally. I think when you have a day where you're slammed with a bunch of client meetings, client calls, and I can't have someone on my team sitting on every meeting with me, the note-taking app has been wonderful. Now with all AI, and this can be a whole nother podcast, you have to train it. It is truly like a 19-year-old intern, as everyone says. And with all new AI technology, you have to train it. If you don't train it, you're going to get you're going to get the product of something that's untrained. And so once we've trained our AI technology, we've been seeing really great results. And it's been an integral part in our operations and efficiency for our meetings.
That's amazing. Maybe if you want, you can share more applications if you're actually using AI aside from Jump. We started using it. I personally am not as tech savvy myself. And so I think my team's having more success than I am right now. But it's amazing. We've had podcasts where we've had people that talk about AI and how they're implementing it into their multi-trillion-dollar companies. And I think the consensus is that AI is not going to put us out of business, but it's just going to help us deliver hopefully a better, more efficient service to our clientele. So that being said, have you viewed being a female in finance through your career as something that you've used to your advantage, or you think it's something that, like we talked about this a little bit before we started the podcast, back in the old days, it was not normal for women to be financial advisors. We still have a very male-dominated industry. I know you do too. We go to a lot of conferences. I always look around to kind of see what the makeup of the room looks like. And it's still like 80% what it used to be. And I think the industry statistics would back that up. I think there are a lot more females that are coming into our industry, though. When we put out an ad for a new hire for our CFP department or planning department, most of the applicants are women. And so I think there's a lot of different roles besides being the advisor, potentially salesperson, bringing clients in, which was, you had an advisor and then an admin, and that was it. Right now, like, look at your practice. You've got a lot of other people on your team. And so from your perspective, how have you viewed that?
I think it has definitely evolved since the beginning of my career. So when I started my career, I will say it was tough. It was really tough because I didn't have anybody that looked like me that I could go to for advice. It was very hard to find a female mentor. I was not only a female, I was a minority woman with a name that everybody spells incorrectly. I will tell you about 80% of the time people spell my name incorrectly. And it's something that between being a minority female and not having a mentor, it was really lonely in the beginning. It was a constant question of, am I doing the right thing? Why am I leaving my law degree? Is this something that I can continue to pursue? Also, growing up in a family, my parents are both people from Vietnam. So it was not, they fled their country from a war, came here with nothing. And so, as you can imagine, the money talks that we had were probably different than most advisors. And so I think that, although I will say that really helped me in my career, the hustle, the grit, the perseverance, it could be much worse than where you're at, right? I think that really drove me to want to succeed, seeing my parents succeed. And I think as I continue to grow and build in this industry, I've seen a huge shift of more programs and offices being more open to bring in women. LPL has an advisor inclusion council where they're promoting more female advisors, and they have the ability to help and mentor women. And I think that is fantastic. I am a big advocate of that and have tried to be a mentor myself to other advisors because I know how lonely and hard it is when I started off. And so I will say now after 20 years of being in this industry, I think being a woman is a wonderful thing because we have certain skill sets, no offense, Jimmy, but I think we have some certain soft skills that men tend to lack. And I think we are excellent listeners. We're compassionate. We are able to listen well with and also incorporate our values and intention. And I think the industry is shifting. It's also shifting from just, make me as much money as possible, I'm gonna retire, and then I die, right? It's pretty morbid, which I think is the old days. And now people are thinking about life in a different way. It's not just about, let me work as hard as I can, make money, and then, my kids inherit it. It's how can I enjoy the money that I'm making while I'm alive? How do I make sure I'm not working so hard that I get sick and I'm not enjoying my life, right? So I think people are really trying to integrate the things that are important to them, the values, if it's spending more time with your kids, going on more vacations, because you can't take your money with you, but you can take, the memories. So a lot of my clients are really shifting to that. And I think with women advisors, that's an area that we are able to help address. And I think men are too, but I think it's a more an innate nature for women. And I think one of the things that when I talk to younger advisors is I'm like, you have to embrace that. Embrace your authenticity, your vulnerability, and be able to share your stories. I think I would hide my stories before, and I would hide things from clients. And it wasn't until I became comfortable sharing it that clients started to open up with me. And that's when I think my career really started to flourish and thrive. Now, I'm not saying that's it, but that was definitely a big part of it. But it comes with, I think, maturity. It comes with being in the business. But I think women entering today are in a much better space than when I did 20 years ago.
I would agree. And I think that I talk about this in other podcasts and just in general, that I think the financial advising industry is unique in the sense that for working mothers like yourself, having the ability, especially being your own boss and entrepreneur, controlling your schedule to do what you need to do for your family. I just think it's a very unique opportunity where you can work from home. A lot of advisors work from home. I know you go to the office a lot. You have a beautiful office. Thanks for sharing the tour with me before when I stopped by. But you and John have created a great space for yourself and your team and your clients that come visit you there. But so I think we have a very unique opportunity in this industry for more women to, especially if they have children, young children, where they can potentially work from home. Like, we don't care if advisors work from home as long as they're effective and productive and all that, right? So I think there's a lot more opportunities for women today than there were, like you said, when you started and when I started. It wasn't the same. And I'm glad you brought up your story. And I think it's important for women, younger women that are listening to this podcast that may either be thinking about getting to this industry or are in this industry to hear from other people like yourself that have had a lot of success, and also doing it in a way that is very balanced. Because I know that you're a very good mother and a very good spouse, and you spend a lot of time with your family, and you also have fun. And so I think it's great for everybody to hear all this stuff too, right? And then I think that's where you and I connect, is that, we have similar backgrounds. I immigrated to the United States at 6 years old. But if you're not friends with Anne on LinkedIn, you should try to connect with her, and she'll probably accept it. But she had a great post recently of her story with her parents immigrating, and got a lot of attention. But I read that story and I saw that picture of your mom and dad. It really hit home for me too. Mm-hmm. And it was phenomenal. And that's why I think as a minority, you and I, in terms of connection, we really appreciate what we have, right? I do want to ask though, like, being an attorney for immigrant parents is probably like the dream, a doctor or a lawyer. When you transitioned to being a financial advisor, did they have any input on that at all? Were they trying to talk you out of it? What are you doing, Ann? Like, financial advisor?
So my mom, I would say, up until maybe 5 years ago, she was still telling all of her friends that she's an attorney.
Oh,
she didn't know, so keep in mind with immigrants and for them, they like their money where they can touch and feel and see it, right?
yes.
So putting it into the stock market, all of that it's a foreign concept for them, even though this is what I do for a living. It wasn't until I think I made it on one of the Forbes rankings and I showed her that she was like, okay, maybe you are in a real career. But for the longest time, my mom still told everyone she's an attorney. She's an attorney, but she works with money because she just can't. Like for her, a financial advisor is not real. It's taken a long time, and I think it's the immigrant mentality, and I think that's also part of understanding your clients. So if you're working with immigrant clients, I will say it requires a different type of behavioral finance. You have to know your clients. You have to understand where they came from. Because being an advisor, I think the number one most important thing is you have to understand your client's psychology of money, right? Which is also an amazing book. It's really true. You have to understand, like, why are they a certain way? Why are they investing this way? Why do they believe what they believe? Because it's only then that you truly understand their psychology of money that you can really advise them. Like if I know why my clients I have a few immigrant clients, they want to have a lot of cash on hand. It's a ridiculous amount of cash. It's probably like 10 years of living expenses, right? But that's their mentality. They said, I left a country where in an instant everything disappeared. So I still have gold bars. I still have cash under my mattress or in a safety deposit box because I don't want to ever have to go through that. Once they explained it to me and we learned that, I have this, on their balance sheet, it's always your sleep well money, right? It's, like $1 million in cash that they need to have. And it's just the understanding allows you to be a better advisor. And I think that's important, knowing the person's background.
Now, I know your husband, John, does a lot of estate planning work for Chinese clients, wealthy Chinese clients. Does that translate over to your business? Meaning, do you have Chinese clientele too?
I do have some. I wouldn't say that that's the bulk of my clients.
Gotcha. Okay.
A lot of his clients are international clients. They're coming here. A lot of them are through EB-5 visas, investors. We are in Orange County, in particular Irvine, which has a very large Asian community. And so because of that, he does have a large demographic of those clients.
So going back to, being a powerhouse female in the financial advice industry, what advice would you give to younger women who are thinking about, this career, if they're not in it, or if they are in it, but maybe kind of struggling, maybe not having the kind of success that they want? What's the advice that you give them?
I would say you have to find what works for you. So this is a wonderful career for women. I think, like Jimmy said earlier, it has allowed me to be flexible with my time with my children. I have 6 and 8-year-old boys, and someone told me the other day that at this point I only have about 5 or 6 more good summers with my kids, or at least my oldest, who's turning 9 tomorrow, right? I think by the time they're like 14, they don't want to hang out with mom and dad anymore. And that thought just really made me sad, right? Like the time flies, and your kids, the last thing I want are my kids to just remember like all mommy did was work, right? And so because of that, I've made a conscious effort to try and be present for their activities, their sports, volunteer at their school. But because of that, and this is where that word balance is used loosely, I don't know if you can ever really balance, because if I'm at Cameron's jiu-jitsu practice or tournament, then I'm taking away from my work, right? Or I'm taking away from doing other things, because I'm putting it towards what I'm choosing to do. And so as a female advisor, I think a big part of it is learning how to integrate all of the things that are important to you. And at any given time, one part is going to get less attention, but it's okay, right? It's okay, because that's life. And I think you have to identify what's important to you, and you can go, which is what I did in the beginning of my career. I worked a ton of hours. I had kids later on in life because I was busy working. And now I've chosen to not be in this aggressive growth mode, taking on every single client, going out and networking and building my business. I think it's important for advisors to realize that it's okay to pick and choose and to decide what works best for you. And I think also what's important is what may work for a male advisor may not work for a female advisor, or what may work for another female advisor may not work for you, right? So I think in the beginning of my career, a lot of people said, do dinners, and host lunch and learns and host seminars. And so I did all of that. I tried all of it. And it just didn't really resonate with me. Having these cold clients come to our dinners and just sitting there talking to these people who I didn't know anything about. And so I pivoted. I shifted where I put my efforts in, and I found something that really worked for me. And so something that I combined my passion, and it just so happened to fall into place with my business, and that is giving back to my community. And so I do a lot of work in our community. Most of my efforts are really driven towards women and children. I currently sit on the board of Girls Inc., which is a nonprofit organization that focuses on helping young girls grow up to be strong, smart, and bold, right? Pretty aligned with
Wow.
what we do. And I love it. And I think through this work, and I also do work with the local university here, which is also where I'm an alumna from, is University of California, Irvine. And so I spend a lot of time doing work in my community. And that's what drives me. That's what I'm passionate about, because a lot of these girls, that was me. That was me growing up, getting clothes from Salvation Army because my parents couldn't afford it, going to Head Start, which is a preschool for low-income families. I was the recipient of these services that were provided from these nonprofit organizations. And because of what I received, I'm now able to give back. And so I think because of that, you work with people in the community, they see your passion, they see how good you are at what you do and how you really come from the heart, and people want to work with you, right? I think for me, that has worked very well than just hosting like a cold dinner where I just have a bunch of people come. They know nothing about me. They sit there for 2 hours and then I call them and try to set up meetings. There's no connection. And in this business, it's all about connection. It's about how you make people feel, right? I think it's important to have people remember, like, I remember she did that, or, she talked about that. And so I've had a lot of clients either come through that or refer me business. And it didn't start off because I thought this was going to bring business. I was just I wanted to give back. And our mantra, and you've seen our neon sign, Jimmy, in my office, is live well, do good.
Yeah.
That is my personal mantra. That is also our corporate mantra. And so with my clients and all of our meetings, I always ask them, what does live well, do good mean to you? Because it means so many things. It can mean something to any person you ask can have a different meaning. But a lot of my clients are philanthropic. A lot of them focus on giving back to the community. And so it really aligns well with the clients that I serve and their purpose and their values in life as well.
That's amazing. Thanks for sharing that story. I didn't know a lot of that about you. So that has translated to new business.
It has. Yeah, it has, and not intentionally. It just, I think it has happened through the years, and now I've just done so much work in the community that people start, people just know. But it takes time, right? It's not something that happens overnight. So that's where, if you're looking for an immediate result, it's not going to happen. For me, it was just over time. I started working with people, and then they started coming to me.
So I think that's great. I mean, I got two things out of that. One was connection. How do you connect with people? And then how do you spend time doing something that you're passionate about, that you love to do? And then in your case, it wasn't intentional to turn it into business, but that's what's happened, right? So would you say that that's the most effective way that you guys bring in new business at Sagemint?
I would say at this point, we're very mostly referrals. I mean, it's just we've had clients for a long time. Clients have been with us for our average tenure of clients is probably like 18, 20 years now. And so I think you just do a good job for your clients. They're your number one raving fans. And then I would say for brand new business, this is probably just the work in the community where people either know of me or they refer us because it's something that they've seen my work, or they've worked with me within the community aspect. That's been an area that has worked very well for us.
What's your vision for the future for your company and yourself? How do you see that evolving? Is there like an end game that you have in terms of this is when I get to this point, then I can retire? Or how do you think about all that stuff?
Yeah. So I would say this is the fun part. This is where I'm at a point now where this is the dreaming part, right? This is, how do you envision our practice and where it grows, because we're fortunate to be at a point now where we have a mature practice. And for me, it's the constant evolution and changes that pushes me to strive to be better. And I think this has been a personal journey for me too, with the Live Well, Do Good. That's really allowed me to take our business to another level and another aspect of it. And Jimmy, I've been really focused on my personal fitness.
Yeah.
And so I think one of the things that I've really been working with clients on is not just your financial fitness, but to be financially secure, right? Which is what we all strive for our clients, but to help our clients also be physically strong and mentally resilient. Those are the three pillars of what Live Well, Do Good is for me right now and in the future. And it's not just for me, it's my team, right? Like I'm like somebody from my office just walked in early this morning. She said she just bought a weighted vest because we've been talking about walking in the office, taking more breaks during lunchtime, making sure we stay physically strong and mentally resilient, because longevity is kind of the latest, I think, trend of what we're talking to clients, and not just from a financial perspective, but just personal development. And I would love to figure out how to incorporate this financial fitness with clients, but also help incorporate this longevity, being physically strong, mentally fit with clients. And so with our conversations, I am talking to clients about this. What are you doing for your health? This is something that you need to invest in now, not later. Like, we shouldn't wait until we're 80 years old and then our health starts breaking down and then we start investing in our health. I think that is the old way of looking at things. I think clients now who are 50 and 60, I encourage them to make sure you join a gym, make sure you're working out, eating well, focusing on all the things that will help you achieve what it is that you want. And most people tell me they want to live a long, healthy life. They want to see their kids grow up. They want to spend time with their grandkids. They want to be able to bend down on the floor and play with their grandkids, right? That is just simple things like that will allow clients to enjoy the fruits of their labor, because you can have all this money and then at 80, 90 years old, like, you can't move, you can't do anything. I think that's really where we're trying to shift. And for me personally, I have to do that. I have to show my clients that I'm not just talking all of this, I'm doing it too. And it's for women, right? Women between the ages of 40 to 60, we have different struggles that we're going through. And it's something that I think women are feeling more empowered to take a hold of that and to be stronger. And I wake up in the morning, I meditate, and then I lift really heavy shit. It's what I do.
I know, I see you. And John, I could totally see your entire office like at lunchtime doing like a rucking thing or something, But that's interesting, though, that you're bringing it into your client conversations.
Yes.
I've never really actually done that, except for the ones that I'm closer friends with.
Yeah.
So I think it'd be great for us to dig into that a little bit more, if you don't mind. So how do you weave that in without sounding sort of like, without offending somebody, I guess, or getting into an area that they may not want us to get into? Although, as financial advisors, if you're an advisor, you know that we talk to our clients about a lot of things that are not related to money. But how do you weave it in, those questions?
So I think a lot of it starts with their health conversation. So when we're planning for retirement, for financial independence, right, there's always a category that we talk about your health. So what are you spending on health currently? What does it look like as you get older? Health is appreciating, or the inflation for health is probably double regular inflation, right? We've seen the cost of healthcare increase. And so that's always a conversation topic that I have with clients, is your healthcare expenses. And then from there, we talk about the Live Well, Do Good mantra. What are some things that are important to you? How does that incorporate it into your life? I think most of my clients, I will say 75% of my clients are women. So maybe it's a topic that we can relate to one another. We talk about our struggles. I will say most of my clients have been very open about that, what they're doing well, what they're struggling with diet, nutrition. And also, I will say, if you follow all of the longevity doctors right now and all of kind of the trend for women,
yes,
it is trending, right? It is something that women between the ages of 40 to 60 are talking about their health and what they're doing differently to just be healthier and live longer. And so it's a conversation you would be surprised. I think I've been able to have it with most of my female clients. And also Medicare, when you go on Medicare, you can join a gym for free. I think it's called the Silver Shoes or something like that. And so a lot of my clients are taking advantage of that, joining a gym for free because it's part of Medicare. And we're talking about, a lot of times it's also the pain of getting started. And so I know a few trainers in my area that focus on working with older women. And so you're not going to a gym where it's intimidating. There's gyms for women, or there's personal trainers that will come to your house, where the focus is to just get you started, right? I think it's the intimidation of lifting heavy weights. Most women, it's been something that we've been taught, like we do cardio, we're not lifting, we're not focusing on strength and bone density and osteoporosis and health of women. And so these are all things that I talk about because I think it's important, because if they're not spending money on this now, I have clients in their 80s, not even just 80s, like late 60s, 70s, they've got osteoporosis. They're falling and they're breaking their hip. They're having hip replacements. Then they are seeing a PT because they need to get treatment on their hips. They're not walking well. And then they're sedentary. And then that leads to other causes of illnesses. And so we can help our clients get ahead of that and help them know that it's part of the budget, because you're going to spend money now or you're going to spend money later on your health. I would rather my clients spend it now.
That's amazing. And, I would imagine that it's probably more comfortable for a woman to talk about that with other women, meaning sure. Another advantage, as you mentioned, that yes, I think most men realize that women's EQ is way higher than ours on average. And I think the statistics are something around by 2030, 60% of the wealth will be controlled by women in the United States. And so if you're targeting females as clients, I think that this is an interesting angle that someone can get into, like yourself, and add more value, because the wealth of health is the big deal, right? I mean, what good is it to have all this money and then die suddenly or be sick? And so I listen to a lot of podcasts, and you're right, the awareness around and the trending around health these days. There's so many podcasts and things that we can get for free from brilliant doctors. I listen to Attia a lot, Peter Attia and Huberman and some of these other ones. And so I
just did one on women. You probably heard the one on menopause, women in menopause. It was a fantastic one.
I haven't listened to that one yet, but I listen to a lot. Yeah, well, I listen to a lot of stuff, but I mean, I think it's, his whole thing is, how do you live the last decade of your life like you're in your 50s and 60s, and not like you're 80 or something, right? And so, as we know, most 80-year-olds are not too active. And my dad, for example, has been immobile for the last 5 years. So he loved to play golf his whole life. Stopped playing golf maybe 7 years ago, maybe 6 or 7 years ago. It's sad. And then when we go on trips, family vacations, he doesn't want to go anywhere ever because his lower back hurts.
Right.
And so I think that part of that genetics, because I've got very tight hamstrings and lower back and everything else too. But anyway, you're right. And if you don't take care of it now, when you get a little bit older, it's a lot more difficult. And by listening to those podcasts, I also know that as you age, when you get to my age or older, it's very difficult to put on muscle. Mm-hmm. So the key is to not lose the muscle, right? And then also, avoiding those big injuries that can take you out of training. So I'm glad we talked about that a little bit. But do you have going back to business for a minute, and then I do want to bring up Cameron, your son, who's so amazing at jiu-jitsu, and talk about balance, because your husband and yourself, you guys are very active in your kids' lives, I think. I see a lot of the posts on the jiu-jitsu stuff, and I know it's a very busy thing for your family. But do you have a goal for your business? Is there a number that you're trying to get to, whether it's production or AUM or anything like that, or not really?
I have a goal. So I work with a business coach, and my goal has shifted. It's changed. I work with a business coach, and I also have what I call a performance coach, which is on my health side. So with my business coach, I think when I first started working with her, the goals were, I would say, very superficial in the sense of what every advisor, I want to manage $1 billion and I want to have, 300 households and make, 10 million GDC, right? So it was a lot of times I think advisors feel like they have to place those goals for them. And I was stuck in that rut too. And so I think as my kids have gotten older and I've seen my business grow, I still have a numbers goal, but what I'm trying to focus on is the amount of time that I'm spending. So just trying to figure out how much time is my team spending on everything, how are we efficient? We can do the same amount of work, but produce more, or we're cutting our hours, but still be as effective, right? I think part of it is just how efficient are we? And that's been a goal for us, is to figure out how efficient are we with our process so that everything is just exactly as it's like working like a machine. And so we've really focused on that. And for me, focusing on the amount of time that I spend to clients. I'd like to have, I think from a numbers perspective, it shifts. And I do have certain numbers and goals and targets. I think it has shifted though, as I've also shifted this goal of longevity and building into my practice. So Jimmy, I'm putting it out there so that, my dream would also be to have a financial planning practice with a wellness center. So clients can come, get their financial fitness on check, whether it's a nutrition, a performance coach, just a full center of health is wealth and health and wellness that they can come in to do all of that. I don't know how it's going to happen, but maybe in 10 years we'll see. So
I can't wait to talk to you about this more. I'm ready to write a check.
Yes.
I love the idea. I love the idea. Actually, I really love the idea. And as I think about, because we want to build out a multifamily office offering for somebody that doesn't have quite the money to invest that typical family offices start at. Besides walking the dog and the concierge services around things that are not around money, what else? I mean, what better than health, right?
Mm-hmm.
That we can deliver to our clients' lives that they maybe otherwise wouldn't do on their own.
Yeah.
And so I think that's a phenomenal idea. I'd love to explore that with you further and just ask you questions about what that looks like.
I have so many ideas for it. And I will say, so my trainer, I call her my performance coach because she truly is my performance coach. So I have lots of coaches, right? I think for every successful advisor, and I've talked to you many times, you've had a lot of coaches throughout your career, right? And we didn't get here because we figured it out on our own. We got here because we were humble enough to know we needed the help and to ask advice. And you've given me so much great advice. And I think part of that is being able to find the right people to help steer you in the right direction, the right path. And so along with talking to you and other successful advisors, working with my business coach, I think my performance coach, she has gotten my mental state of mind in such tip-top shape and form from the just consistency, showing up and just doing hard things, right? Like that's the physical performance side that I think for an advisor you need to have. It's a career that's cyclical. It's tough. It's good. Then we have tough times, and we have to be able to stomach all of that. And so this health, this wealth is so important. And that would be the goals and my dreams for the next 10 years.
That's amazing. So what I got out of this is that you're really focused on the process, the idea of being very efficient versus just a number. I know you probably have a number, but being very, very efficient, which is really just improving that process, getting it better and better and better. And this idea on health, obviously it goes well with your mantra. And I think that's an amazing thing to explore about maybe how the financial advice industry could be maybe, at the forefront of that more than we are today, right? Because we're absolutely in a position to help guide our clientele. And so for all the families that we serve, especially the ones that have some resources that they can invest into coaches themselves or trainers or for their families or eat better, that kind of a thing. So anyway, that's really interesting. I want to, after I jump off the pod, I'm going to call you. And if you got 5 minutes, I might want to chat with you about that more.
Yeah.
I do want to talk about just, I think we're getting close to an hour here, but, and I don't have any hard stops, but you may. So balancing work, your husband's also an entrepreneur. I know he's very busy, but balancing work and family, I know John and you are both very invested in your kids' activities and so forth. And your son Cameron's I hope he does, very good jiu-jitsu guy, practitioner, and wins a lot of these tournaments and stuff. It's amazing to watch him, this little guy, take down these big guys. And I hope he doesn't get into UFC and get his head pounded in his
God, I
life.
hope not too.
But but we do have an amazing UFC performance center here that maybe you guys should try to go visit at some point. Maybe John might be interested with Cameron. I do know some people over there. But anyways, balancing work and home. What's your advice on that? And I love this thing. And I was kidding with John, and a little bit not so much. I've never really had abs, and John has great abs. And I remember like a couple of years ago, he was posted about his abs, and he goes, "You can do it. You just gotta be disciplined." And so, what advice would you give to all of us around just kicking butt on the balance of living well yourself, and not letting the family side or your personal side go with trying to make money?
I think you have to set expectations for yourself and know that it is work and that it's going to be a struggle. It's not easy. I mean, people like nothing that we do is easy. But I think what differentiates you from being successful and thriving is just focusing, and this is the mantra I use for my kids, just being 1% better every day, right? That's the Atomic Habit book, James Clear, just focusing on doing repetitive things, staying consistent. Because for the most part, I think people just they lack the discipline. I will say I'm probably not the smartest person, but I'm probably more disciplined than you. I probably work harder than you, and I show up. And I think that's the differentiating factor is just 1% better. That's what we strive for. And I tell Cameron the same thing in jiu-jitsu and in life, right? For us, it's you're going to win some days, you're going to lose some days, and it's going to ebb and flow. You're going to have cycles of success. You're going to have cycles of failure, which I have experienced and John has experienced being an entrepreneur. It's a lonely roller coaster, and we're fortunate to have found each other to share in the entrepreneurial life. But you got to get back up. And you just know that you got to keep doing what you're doing. And if it, and also recognizing that if it's not working and it's failing, that you are humble enough to realize, okay, we have to try something different. Right. And I think with our kids, that's the mantra that we have for them. You've also seen the neon sign in my office or in my home gym that says Wongs don't lose. I don't know
Wow.
if you've seen it.
Not yet.
We have a neon sign that leads up to our home gym that says Wongs don't lose. And people are always, they always say like, gosh, that's a really tough thing to put on your kids. And so, well, one, we had to find a catchy saying because it was a neon sign, so it had to be short. But really what we talk to our kids about is that you don't give up. Right. It's that mentality of if you lose and then you don't get back tomorrow and go to practice, you've given up, you're losing. If, you thought you did the best for your clients and then they left for some reason and then you get all down on yourself, you're giving up. Right. I think in our world, there are so many different things that we face, especially as women. There are so many roadblocks that I have faced. And I think part of it is just blindly getting up because I didn't know any better. But also now, today, it's like knowing that, okay, maybe I'm not going to make leaps and bounds. My goal is just to be 1% better every day. And if you show up and you're just 1% better every day, in a year, you're going to be better than that next advisor. And in 10 years, you're going to be producing more than that next advisor because you showed up and you didn't quit, right? And I think that is the discipline that we have as entrepreneurs. I think as all entrepreneurs, it's the discipline and the consistency that sets you apart.
That's awesome, but I think it's so cool that you're not weaving it in, but you're building a culture for your family and your sons, right? And this is what we're about. And so I think sometimes it's as parents, myself, it's not so easy to do that, and starting earlier is better. So that's awesome. What are some things that? So obviously, if people are listening to or watching this, you can see why everyone wants to hang out with Ann. She's very popular at the conferences, and everyone wants to be friends with her. And I'm lucky to call her a friend, and her husband too. But what are some of the things about you that we don't know? What are you interested in outside of working out and being a mom and being successful in the financial advice business and being healthy and Is there anything else that's interesting stuff that you would share?
I think I've shared everything with you. I'm an open book. I'm very spiritual. That has guided me in the last, I think, I went through a spiritual journey when I turned 40. I think I found myself in a really tough place being a mom to babies, and working with clients, trying to grow a business. And I struggled a lot, I think mentally, and just to find a place where I could find a path again, right? And so because of that, I've discovered, like I mentioned earlier, I do try to meditate, trying to stay grounded, stay focused. I do my annual birthday solo trip to Miraval. I go on a solo birthday trip every year. Don't invite anyone. People used to get really offended by that, but now I'm like, this is my time. And I go, and those are the times where I do things I'm not used to doing, right? I like to always incorporate, like this past year, we did a whole like beehive excursion and learned about bees, and kind of incorporated that into, how bees work. And that was really interesting. I like to do kind of active things like ropes courses, challenge courses, those types of things that push me on the other level, from a physical level versus a mental level. And I think that's something that I always find joy in, but it's part of it, whether it's the physical or the mental, it comes back to spirituality. And it's not necessarily a religion thing or any of that. It's just, if you don't have a belief and you don't have a guiding principle for yourself, then what are you doing, right? And I think that's where I felt lost. And once I kind of found that and came back to a grounded place, I've incorporated that into my daily life, and my team knows it. They gave me, I have this kind of crystals in my office and kind of things that keep me balanced. It's all different things for everyone. And Jimmy, I'm a foodie, right? So my love language is food. I love food, and I love to try new things and love to eat. And just those are things that bring me joy. Like, I will get in line for 3 hours to try, some kind of hot restaurant or new food that came out. And John will literally be like, no, I'm absolutely not in line for that. So
Awesome.
But for me, it's the experiences, right? It's the experiences. It's what at this point in my life, I've got to the point, if it doesn't bring me joy, I'm not doing it.
That's awesome. Well, I think that's a great way to finish off. I think you shared a lot. I really appreciate it. And thanks for being vulnerable there too, talking about yourself. I think the awareness around health, also mental health, for both men and women, it's something that's a really cool thing that's trending right now. And I think it's great for all of humanity. And there's a lot of resources for people. And so I think it's very inspirational for everyone, not just women, young women or other women advisors or females in general. Your journey, and I've known you now for a few years, and I've actually witnessed you and your family growing in that way. So it's not you're just talking about it; I see it, and so it's pretty cool to see that. And I think that is probably one of the reasons why you attract you and your husband also, but you attract people because they want to be like Ann. They want to. So anyway, and also for those of you that don't know, she's very humble and extremely, extremely nice and very willing to share and give. And so I didn't know about your, philanthropic work in your community that you do. And I think that's really neat too. I definitely want to explore this health and financial advice topic with you. So I'm going to call you maybe in a minute and try to get into that a little bit. And
I didn't listen to Peter Attia too, because that's what sparked all this. Peter Attia's "How do you want to live your last decade of life?" That's what sparked this whole, how do I re-envision financial planning for my clients? So,
it's interesting. I listened to a Peter Attia interview, or was it Huberman? It was one of those two guys interviewed. It was about, because the thing I worry about the most, because I've got family history, my dad is, coronary artery disease in the heart and stuff like that. And so I actually reached out to the doctor, and it was Attia. He goes, message, this person, see if you can get into the practice, which I don't think is open. My friend tried to get into Peter Attia as a patient and couldn't get in. And but he goes, if not, there's this other person, and anyway. I think it's also neat with the exposure of health through things like podcasts or other things. And I would encourage people, and I know you would too, to just reach out to people. Just because they're famous or whatever doesn't mean that you can't connect with them. You don't need to have money or be a powerful person or somebody that's a celebrity for them to reach back out to you. And I just did it through LinkedIn, and the gentleman reached right back out to me. I actually want to do a podcast that's centered around health and around cancer.
Get Tia on your podcast, Jimmy.
I would love to. I don't know him, but I'm sure somebody that maybe I know would know him, and I'm not sure if he would do that, but it'd be amazing. But I think for financial advisors, since this podcast is mostly for them, for us, I think it's very important for us to pay attention to this, right? And so not only could we bring this into our business, maybe as a value add to our clientele or the people that we can help, but for ourselves, I think it's really important because, as you said, we go through a lot of cycles, whether it's stock market volatility or just business wins or losses or whatever. And especially if you're an entrepreneur, it's a whole different ballgame. So anyway, I think we covered a lot today. I could go on longer, but probably give you back some of your time. I really appreciate you being on.
Come and dance on our floor. Take a step that is new.